We are greatly thankful to the participants, dignitaries on the dais of the dais, deans, heads, and different faculty members, research scholars, and students. It's indeed an event having great significance, not merely that the workshop will discuss new education policy. In fact, the most important part of this workshop is perhaps the coming together of diverse stakeholders who represent different domains and who are directly associated with the rolling out of new education policy and its implementation on the grassroots. I mean the district level officers, teachers, students, and authorities. Fortunately, we have all of them present in this hall. It will hopefully be an enriching experience throughout the sessions. As all the stakeholders in India discuss new education policy 2020, be it academicians, policymakers, politicians, or people in media, it's probably an important topic that has dominated our mental landscapes during past few years. Much has been written on this vision document, and we find people across the board highlighting its features as well as the challenge ahead in its implementation throughout the country, considering the India's vast socio-cultural, economic, political, and geographical diversity. Yet it is being unfolded in every single guideline from NCERT, UGC, and Ministry of Education. And at the same time, new challenges and opportunities are reckoned by people who think and discuss this all-evolving vision document and policy. In this direction, the Department of Social Work, University of Kashmir, felt need to start a discussion on how New Education Policy 2020 is going to restructure school education in India with special focus on Jammu and Kashmir. We have senior officers and district officers of School Education Department participating today, along with a team of national level experts on the subject like Professor Vandana Saxena from University of Delhi, Professor Farida Khan, and other panelists. We hope that this event further unfolds the new education policy and updates us with the challenge as well as the opportunities for all of us in the near future and in the regional context. So with this, I once again thank all of you. So before we proceed further, I request Dr. Shazia Manzoor to kindly formally welcome the guests.
It's my pleasure to welcome you all on this one-day workshop on New Education Policy and Restructuring of School Education in India, which is organized by the Department of Social Work, University of Kashmir, in collaboration with Mission Directorate of PM Poshan and School Education Department, Govt of Jammu and Kashmir. I extend a warm welcome to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Nilofer Khan, for gracing the occasion as the chief guest of the function. I would also like to welcome the guest of honor, Director School Education, Shri Tasadduq Hussain Mir, for accepting our invitation in spite of his busy schedule. I extend a warm welcome to the keynote speaker of the workshop, Professor Vandana Saxena from Department of Education, University of Delhi. Thank you, ma'am, for sparing your valuable time and traveling from Delhi to enlighten us with your expertise on the New Education Policy 2020. Welcome goes to Dr. Nisar Ahmed Mir, Registrar, University of Kashmir, for being with us and supporting us in our activities, both academic and outreach ones. Last but not the least, I would like to extend a warm welcome to the deans, directors, HODs, officers of the university, CEOs, and other participants from the School Education Department. In the Department of Social Work, the faculty has a continuous thrust on the multidimensional theoretical aspects of the social work field, and a comprehensive theoretical and empirical grounding is given to the students of the social work. The department is orienting the students for the holistic personality development, and in this regard, organization of seminars, guest lectures, symposiums, and the lectures by the world-renowned guest faculties is a frequent norm in the Department of Social Work. The department is having a vibrant and a talented faculty who are continuously engaged in conducting action research projects for the government as well as the non-governmental organizations. There are many studies which are supported by many national organizations, and among such research engagements of the department, one of the recent activity taken is the social audit of PM Poshan. And we all know that PM Poshan, earlier called as midday meal scheme, and the evaluation was conducted by the Department of Social Work. We did a study earlier. We did a thorough examination and evaluation of 2 districts. In the first phase, we covered the district Ganderbal and the district Budgam, and the report is already submitted to the government. And the report has been well taken, the feedback and the kind of gaps which have been identified by the Department of Social Work, it's being implemented, and I believe that the gaps will be, of course, filled. And today we will be also sharing the report, and we have done a study of evaluation of 8 districts. And the purpose of conducting such activities, these academic institutions cannot work in isolation. We need to work and have a close partnership and network with the government, because we believe at the social work, the problems need to be solved. The grassroots problems and the solution need to be taken while conducting these studies. And some of the important findings which came out from the social audit is that the basic health facilities, whether we talk about basic health screening, eye checkups, dental checkups, they have been taken care by the midday meal scheme. And at the same time, the attention and the retention of students is possible because of midday meal. We have seen a lot of community members in the field. They have really felt that midday meal has attracted the students and it has reduced the dropout. And I think that that is the fundamental thing of the midday meal scheme. And one of the critical findings emerged from the study was that of a lack of proper infrastructure at school level. We all know that the lack of infrastructure creates a lot of problems in addressing the issues which normally students should get at the field level. So this is the study which we have done. The team members, the faculty members were all co-investigators in this study, and it has been done by the students of the social work department. A thorough exercise was done during the winters, and all the data was collected, analyzed properly, and the report will be shared today. This is the first part of the workshop. The another part of the workshop is that we all know that new education policy and the restructuring of school education is a very important thing. We definitely need to start somewhere to kind of link the school education with the higher education. And today we have a lot of panelists, lot of experts who will have a deliberation on how to address the gap and how to be ready for the new kind of challenges, and at the same time, more I would say the opportunities which the new education policy has given us. Thank you very much, and a nice welcome to all of you again.
Just 2-3 months back, received a letter from the UT administration about the evaluation of the midday scheme meal by the Department of Social Work. And they gave an ultimatum that you have to do it within a span of 2.5 months. Technically, it looks difficult that we can do an evaluation study of 8 districts in the shortest span of time, then to design the research problem, then to formulate a research schedule, and then collect the data, analyze it, and see its outcomes, and then to submit the report within the shortest possible time. But hats to the Department of Social Work, we sat together, formulated a little bit framework about the conduct of research study, evaluation study in the midday meals, and fortunately it got success, and we see today that report sharing is being done between the Department of Social Work and the state government. I must congratulate Dr. Shazia that she has together mixed the two ideas about the national education policy and the evaluation or sharing of the social audit report. In fact, at University of Kashmir, we do have organized a lot of workshops and seminars about the national education policy, but we are focusing on the higher education system of J&K or at the national level. We had yet to start any deliberations on the national education policy at the school level, and fortunately today she has organized it along with the Director of School Education is here. We congratulate both of them at this event. In fact, as we all know that India is the second largest network of higher education and the school education system in the world. We follow the China in the higher education and the state and the lower education at the world level. And national education policy, which has come out in 2020, which was started probably in 2017, and a draft was issued for public comments also, and ultimately a final draft came in 2020. We see that a lot of water has flown down the line at the global level, and we see a lot of changes, a lot of transformations, particularly at the IT, information technology level, at the world level, and we see a lot of changes in the medium of education. So the education policy of 1986 has almost now become a redundant policy, and it was required that we should have a new and fresh enthusiasm and fresh policy at the workplace so that we could take measures in transformation of our education system. And we see that all schemes had an inbuilt component that there should be upliftment of underprivileged or underutilized resources at the UT or at the country level. So there, as we all researchers know and policymakers also know, that there are certain, we do a pilot study before launching any scheme. We do a concurrent evaluation, we do a midterm evaluation, we do a summative evaluation. These different evaluations ultimately result in certain corrective measures which the academics institutions or the scholars or the teachers, they suggest it to the government, and ultimately government takes certain corrective measures in implementation of those policies. I hope that today's document, which is being shared by us and the UT government, it will definitely give a better results, particularly vis-a-vis the identification of certain issues which have been done by the social work department while evaluating the scheme. I hope it will give better results and give better understanding of the scheme, and it is targeted to be achieved by the state government or the UT government or the central government or the department level.
Speaking and interacting, and of course reading through and critically analyzing the policy, I have a certain points to make which I think can add to the discussions throughout the day and in fact later when we all sit down and discuss these points. So one of the biggest point that I see in the policy, each policy, I don't see any of the policies being different from another. For the simple reason that each policy foundationally is trying to give us a vision document. So policy will never tell us that what do we have to do. They will tell us a kind of a vision for the country, if it's in education, it will tell us about what are we supposed to be doing for the next maybe 2 decades in education. And that is how a policy document is planted and it is being shown to us. So what is the core in this policy if I look at it from the point of view of practitioners? I think there is a very, very critical shift from the entire idea of content to competencies. So education now is not seen only as learning or delivering content. It is about building competencies among students. And of course, for building competencies, the consequent factors would be that we got to be thinking about our pedagogies differently, we got to be thinking about our assessments differently. Because if it is content, it's easy for us to have a term and examination and assess the students of how much content they have learned and things like that. So there has been an exaggerated criticism of the examination system that we have had across all levels. So I think this would require a different kind of understanding in assessment, and we will have to move to assessment for learning, from assessment of learning, assessment for learning to assessment as learning. So that shift of assessment procedure would automatically reflect in the pedagogies also. So how are we going to be talking about? So the CBSE, many of the schools here might be affiliated with CBSE, they might have seen that experimental tryout with continuous and comprehensive evaluation. This is now, it was discontinued, we are all aware of that, there's no need. In the informed audience, we don't have to go into the history of practices that we have had in India. But I think it's important for us to understand that we might be moving into it a little more, in a little more organized manner now. And that is something which is for us to understand, reflect upon, and find out that what kind of practices are we going to be thinking about. It definitely has a lot of implications for the curriculum that we are going to be talking about. For school education, including age 3 to 6, as formal education process now, it's going to be, it's going to change the way schools are looking at themselves. You know, education, it doesn't start with age 6 now, it starts much earlier, that is age 3. How are we going to engage with different stakeholders in this area? Because 0 to 6 was primarily a responsibility of Anganwadis and other such organizations earlier. How the schools will reinvent themselves, because this 3 to 6 age was either left to, you know, in Delhi we have a lot of tradition of public commercial play schools, you know. So it was left to a lot of those players, public players, private players at that point of time. We got to be looking at it that now that we are getting this responsibility on our shoulders, we got to be rethinking about how the early years of education would be seen and would be understood. Since we're talking about a shift in the competencies, we'll also have to look around that what is that we want to have and share and discuss, and we want the students of this age group to learn exactly. Do we want them to start learning writing alphabets earlier, or do we have to do something of that kind, you know? So we got to be actually understanding. There's a lot of discussion on, and there has been a lot of literature on how the playway methods can be engaged at the junior level. We got to be really looking at them with a little more sincerity now, at least for the age group of 3 to 8, probably, you know, in that particular segment, because we shall be looking at the age of 3 to 8 together now in a school system. So I think these are the kind of challenges which we are facing at the school level. But there are, of course, larger challenges because there's a lot of emphasis on this policy for the nativeness or the socio-personal context of the child. Now this needs to be very critically balanced with the possibility of child becoming an integrated human being at the national level and then subsequently at the international global citizen. So how we create those kind of transitions from local to national to global, I think that is yet another challenge that all of us as academicians will have to be facing, we will have to be working towards that. What do we mean by providing education to the children in their native languages? What does that mean? How long do we want to continue that? And do we want the children to shift from the local language to state language to national language to international language in subsequent amount of time? Or do we want the children to have, or do we want the system to have kind of, you know, higher education in all local languages which a child has? These are the kind of, you know, cross sections where we are at this moment when we are discussing different kind of, where we are discussing at different forums. I think that's, these are the kind of challenges that we're going to be facing. We got to be facing about differentiating between the medium of instruction and between the process of learning a language, how language and medium are different, and how the students will have to be nurtured in which way. It's something which needs to be understood. I was in a forum which was organized by National Council of Scheduled Tribes, and I think the language debate was very, I can say, aggressive there, because the kind of languages which we have with our tribal communities, those languages have not become a part of the regular system or in the schooling and things like that. So these are the kind of multiple challenges that we are going to be facing and we are going to be looking at. So the policy very critically addresses the idea of fragmentations. We have not seen the preschool education to school education to secondary education to higher education. In the earlier kind of a forum, there used to be a kind of, you know, different agencies which were looking at different parts of these, of the entire education process. There is going to be a kind of a difference now because the policy addresses this idea of fragmentation, and we got to work in both ways. You know, the school education will have to reinvent itself to be coordinating with the higher education, and the higher education will have to really be coordinating with what is happening in the school now. So this kind of a continuity that is being planned is something which is the vision of the document, is what I want to say. But I also want to say that this is precisely the challenge of implementation also. Because if everything gets into us, I think there was a lot of freedom with different kind of organizations which were looking after different stages of education also. Now, if those autonomies are being taken away, that is a kind of a challenge, that how do we kind of, you know, get in sync with the expectations and the requirements across different levels. So that is a critical challenge, that if we have a single organization looking after the entire process of education, what kind of flexibilities, freedom, what kind of stage-specific interventions can we really assert for. As academicians, we always have our own domains and we always want to say that this is going to be better for this age group. We always have those kind of bases, and we are not saying it out of our gut feelings. We have research foundations, research bases to be saying that, you know, this is particularly possible and more relevant and more appropriate for this particular age group. So the times to come will tell us that the kind of autonomy and flexibility that the system has had as a system, there's a lot of autonomy and there's a lot of flexibility built in the way the student can opt for their syllabus, they can opt for their courses, but as a system, shall we have that kind of a flexibility and autonomy remains to be seen and worked upon. Another important part is there's a lot of emphasis on teachers' development across all stages. And two important points which are coming in that is the pedagogy and the research. So across all stages, there's a lot of emphasis on how the pedagogy should be, because the policy talks about an education system which looks after the student in his or her socio-personal context with a lot of criticality. It's a movement from, student for the system to system for the student. Now, in that context, one of the major stake player or one of the major, player or the role, the actor, would be a teacher in the classroom. How teacher works on his or her own empowerment, how they work towards looking at things in a different manner would also require a lot of consideration and a lot of deliberation. Especially when we are talking about setting up our education in the native context, So which means that a lot of things which are done on a global level or which are done on a national level, the kind of studies that we ran, may not be very relevant for a given local context. Now, if these policies, these practices are not very relevant at the local level, the teachers will have to have those kind of action research capabilities, grounded theory research capabilities, so that they can find out certain kind of solutions, they can learn to address the problems at the local level by themselves. So, working on this entire idea of teacher as researchers and teachers as their own, self-motivated professional, taking their own responsibility of professional development will also be a very critical factor. So we got to be working a lot on the teacher training programs, both in service and pre-service, so that we are able to have a bag of professionals who have the same vision, who share the same vision and who are able to have this capacity to convert the vision of the policy into the practices in their own context of the school system.
I am pleased to have you all here with us today, and we are proud to be part of this workshop and to be in this wonderful place to share our experiences and to learn from great scholars at this seat of learning, the University of Kashmir. Before we get started, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor Nilofer Khan with congratulations for recently assuming the charge of VC as first female VC of University of Kashmir. A proud moment for all of us. Thanks to all who generously arranged this workshop, this event of our educational administrators and other stakeholders. My special gratitude to Department of Social Work, University of Kashmir for taking this initiative. Conduct of social audit of a scheme is definitely going to help us fill the gaps, if any, or to fill the issues or any sort of unimplemented aspects is a good initiative. And in today's workshop, I am sure that more focus will be on NEP 2020, which has recently been launched just 2 years before by Government of India, and as of now it is in its implementation phase. Basically the policy is aimed at transforming the Indian education system to meet the needs of future challenges, future aspects. The new policy seeks rectification of poor literacy and numeracy outcomes of students associated with primary level schools reduction in dropouts at the level of middle and secondary schools, and adoption of multidisciplinary approach in the higher education system.
I'm sure the recommendations which they have made will reach to the policy makers, and whatever action has to be taken, that will be taken because that's very important. Otherwise, it will remain as a report, as an exercise if it does not move forward and action is not taken. I think those recommendations can be taken one by one. I am aware all of a sudden we cannot take all these recommendations. About the PM Poshan scheme, I know it's a very important scheme for our underprivileged children, and we at the university and at the school level, if we are able to really make this scheme very successful by periodically keep on evaluating it and giving the recommendations, and so that it becomes easy for policy makers to see where the lacunae are and where they can plug them up. I was myself involved in one of the scheme long time back in 90s of NIPSED. That was about evaluation of social components of ICDS in J&K. Believe me, when I completed the report and the recommendations which I made, Director NIPSED, I remember she was Dr. Adarsh Sharma, that time again a home scientist, a human development person. At once, one by one, those recommendations were implemented, not only in J&K, but even at the national level. So, Dr. Shazia and her team, I really congratulate you for taking out this report, because I am sure that this report will be very beneficial and beneficial at the grassroots level for whom this scheme is meant. Now I go to NEP policy 2020 and restructuring of school education in India. I'm aware that our Director School Education and his team has a great challenge in order to implement this particular scheme in our schools. I'm also aware that we have a very robust syllabus for our school education. Our children from government schools, they excel in NEET, they excel in JEE. We are very much aware of that. We have very hard-working children in government schools, those who excel. And the Director School Education, I also know, gives special focus to the children who have that acumen and who can move forward in order to provide them coaching and other facilities. So I'm very much satisfied that our school education even at this level is quite satisfactory, but of course, as Shazia and our keynote speaker said, the world is changing, and globally the structure of education is changing. It is changing in our nation also, in our UT also. We are already geared up at higher education level, number of meetings we had, how we have to implement this NEP policy in our affiliated colleges, in our university. So lots of exercise is to be done. It's quite hard work, but I'm sure jointly we'll be able to succeed and able to implement it, and implement it very successfully. Our UT has always been serious about its education policy, whether it's at school level, higher education level, university or college level. We have always maintained that quality of education and standard of education, and I'm sure that the expert committees which will be framed for this NEP 2020 will also very much, with their keen interest, with their keen expertise. If we need to have expertise from outside also, we can also do that and implement our NEP policy 2020 very efficiently. As our Director School Education said, that 2030 by 2030 we have to fully implement it, and I'm sure that before 2030 we'll be able to implement it, because I know our missionary over here, whether it's school or it's college or it's university, we take things very seriously, and we try to implement and be ahead of the time. So all the best to everyone, and once again congratulations to Department of Social Work, Dr. Shazia and her team, for taking these initiatives in collaborating with various research projects. I do hope that in future also such projects will be taken up, and because it shows that how our university and how our talented teachers are involved at grassroots level also. Thank you very much.